So welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices monthly community call. So this is the June 2018 edition. We've been having these monthly community calls since December 2014. So this is quite a few years actually. We've been doing SharePoint dev community calls and try to promote the open source and sharing is caring terminology and slogans with the SharePoint developer group. Now, in these monthly community calls, this is mainly for going through what has happened within the last month and also talk about certain, let's say, wider specifics around the SharePoint development. So today we're going to talk about slightly numbers. We're going to talk about what has happened within the June and what was part of the June release, so who contributed as part of the June release, and what companies were also involved in the June release. Then we'll talk about certain other, let's say, news and areas around the community work and announcements and roadmap topics. We also have two different demos coming up today. Let me actually flip the slide. So one first demo will be coming from Patrick Rogers. So Patrick has been leading the effort for SharePoint or the PnPjs library, and PnPjs is a great JavaScript library offering you a Fluent API, getting access on the SharePoint REST API. So you don't have to remember what is the REST URLs and all of that. You can use the Fluent API from Patrick and the team behind of the PnPjs and accessing information. One of the big things around that one in May was the announcement of Fluent API for taxonomy. And that's huge because there is no REST API for taxonomy APIs in SharePoint Online. But the PnPjs is now offering you an easy way to get access on the taxonomy information using kind of the Fluent way of getting access on the API. So you can do group.termsets.terms, and then you can access all of the terms within the particular term set. Patrick's going to demonstrate that one later today. And then we kind of talk about, the last demo, or the second demo is around the SharePoint Starter Kit. So we're going to talk about that one as well. It is a great starter kit for showing you how to extend the great out-of-the-box communication side by adding additional web parts and extensions, and how to create really portal-like experiences using the out-of-the-box communication side by adding additional certain, let's say, customer-specific customizations or extensibility on top of it. This is really a first version of that release. We will keep on evolving that one as we move along in this journey. Now, quickly, there's always new people joining on this call, so quickly explaining the model, what we have on the SharePoint developer community or the SharePoint developer topics. Our community is actually pretty insanely active, to be honest. We have different selections and different ways of engaging with the community. You can use the SharePoint developer group in the Microsoft Tech community by going to SPDev or SPPMP community URL. You can join our bi-weekly SharePoint Framework community call, where we talk about specifically what's new on SharePoint Framework. We have SharePoint Framework demos and all of that stuff. Then we have a separate bi-weekly SharePoint General Dev call. And in this call, we're going to talk about, let's say, maker stuff like Flow and Power Apps and how they associate with SharePoint. We talk about the site provisioning. We talk about PnP PowerShell and all of that stuff as well. And then we have these monthly community calls where we go through what has happened within the past month. And then we have also demos in these calls as well. So for all of these things, you don't have to join all of these. You can join all of these if you have availability. You can choose what is your interest, and you can choose which of the calls you want to actually join. Easiest way to keep kind of up to date on what's happening in the SharePoint Dev is to join once a month in the monthly community call if you don't have availability to join the other calls or to participate on the discussions otherwise. Now, in May, just quickly showing some numbers as well. In May, from the SharePoint developer community perspective, we had 157,000 watch times in YouTube. We haven't actually released that many new videos recently, except the community call recordings, which are, by the way, great videos as well. So all of these demos and all of the stuff is getting released and shared within 24 hours after the community call. So if you have a colleague or somebody who missed this call and they would like to see the demo which we do this call, or you want to go back and re-see what has been released, you can always go to our YouTube channel and have a look on the old calls there. There was 27,000 views in YouTube, which is a pretty decent number for a monthly views. In the GitHub, we had 38,000 unique visitors for the past 2 weeks, or average in 2 weeks in May, and 172,000 views in GitHub altogether, which is quite a nice number as well. So people are finding more and more our open source tooling, our open source samples and things, and they know how to communicate together with engineering as well. In the docs.microsoft.com, which the PnP initiative coordinated by engineering also owns, we had 898,000 views. So we just barely missed the 900,000 views in the docs.microsoft.com SharePoint dev sign. But we're looking into hitting the 1 million marker pretty soon. The growth is already in double digits in every single month. So we're getting more and more views on the material, which is good, because obviously we want to make sure that our documentation it is addressing your questions and your topics. And if it's not, please let us know. So we're able to add the needed documentation available. On the Pmp Reusable Components, these are reusable open source components which are being created and coordinated or developed by the community together. And for example, the Pmp Sesame Core and PnPjs and the Pmp PowerShell. And these were used in more than 12,000 tenants. They generated 99.9 billion requests. So we didn't quite break the 10 billion again. We're super close on that. And the most used capability is the provisioning engine. So the remote provisioning engine for giving you templating capabilities for SharePoint Online or on premises as well. Now, quite often people are also interested on what about the new thing, the new model, the latest thing in SharePoint Online, which is the SharePoint Framework. Is it actually catching fire? Do I really need to learn this new stuff? Well, yes, you do. A lot of our community members are already learning this stuff, and they're using widely SharePoint Framework. So SharePoint Framework is by far the most used customization model in Office 365 or Microsoft 365. It doesn't really matter which term we actually use on that. The growth is pretty fast, like we mentioned in the SBC keynote as well. So every single 2 months, it doubles pretty much the usage. So the left side is using the usage per user, and the right side is using the usage per tenant. What's actually interesting is that the usage per tenant is being more exponential than the usage per user, and this is indicating already that more and more people are using dev tenants. So they're learning how to do development of SharePoint Framework, and that will be then soon visible on the other side of the chart as well. Now, a few reminders, documentation and guidance, AKMS SP DevDocs. So this is the documentation platform. Like mentioned, we almost hit 900,000 views on May. People can find the relevant and up-to-date documentation in here. There are some pages which are not quite up-to-date. And if you find some issues on the documentation, please open up an issue, add a comment on the page saying, well, I don't agree on this one. We should get this one up-to-date. So we're able to actually then go back and view the page and then potentially update the page if there's any issues with the page. All of the SharePoint Framework guidance is here. There's plenty of tutorials how to get started on the stuff. There's plenty of recommendations and video references in these materials as well. And we're looking into adding additional training material here as well in the future. Now, the kind of related thing, if you're running in the SharePoint Developer topic issues, please let us know. In SharePoint Engineering, we're highly interested on helping you on trying to figure out what goes wrong within your APIs or within your solutions. If you would call the normal SharePoint support, unfortunately, the normal standard support, they do not actually provide support for developer questions. And that's why we have opened up this issue list in the SP DevDocs. We are still slightly catching up on the opened issues since the May was super crazy for us to pretty big conferences. So we kind of slightly are are falling behind of following up on what's happening, but we're catching this relatively soon. But the whole point is that you're able, if you run into an issue, you can't explain what's the issue, you can go here, submit an issue, and we'll have a look on it. There has been a few issues related on 1.5 release of SharePoint Framework, which we've been able to now recognize and fix, and we will release a new version of the SharePoint Framework 1.5 relatively soon to provide you the updates and fixes which you thankfully provided for us. Now, a few comments on the user voice and the SharePoint development section in here. So this one and the top 10 entries in here haven't really changed that much. So on the user voice side, the biggest change is actually the number 8 person or item is a new fellow here, which we haven't seen before. So somebody has done a good marketing on getting enough votes for the number 8 item, which is around the fact that you would like to have a support to be able to hide the out-of-the-box header when you have your custom header available. If some of these topics are super important for you, please go to the AKMS SP Dev user voice. Please let us know, and please add input on the actual comments. What we're also interested in, not just around the number of votes, but if possible, you can always add a comment there and add some sort of a description on your business case as well. Why are you using the feature? Why is certain thing important for you? Because that helps us on prioritizing the needed capabilities for SharePoint development platform in the future, which is obviously important for us as well. And even though we're Microsoft, we do not have an infinite resources, which is a pity. It would be awesome if we would have, because we would be able to help all of you people, but we can't always do that. So we need to prioritize our time and our resources based on the people and based on the entries and votes what you're having. Now, excuse me for a quick break, because I needed to actually get a picture on the number of attendees. We're, by the way, making an all-time record on the participant numbers in this call, which is pretty cool. There was 201 participants in the call 1 minute ago, and now we're going slightly down. That's fine. Good. The June release went live yesterday. So June release, the releases are basically monthly summaries on what we have done within the last month. Plus, we release, for example, the PnPjs component, the NuGet packages, and the PnP PowerShell once a month as a new version for you to take advantage. Obviously, the previous versions are always available, so you don't have to upgrade immediately if you want to first double check something on the latest version. But as part of the June release, there was quite a lot of new client-side web part and extension samples available. So thank you for the contributions of those. There was numerous existing samples which were upgraded to 1.4.1 or 1.5 version already at this point. There's quite a lot of updated documentation and guidance, and that's moving along quite nicely. And as we can see that we are getting quite a lot of views on those as well, which seems to indicate that people are finding them valuable. And there was updates on the reusable SharePoint Framework controls. And this is something which just to kind of promote that as well. It is a great way of reducing the amount of work you need to actually implement in your web part. So have a look on the Pmp Reusable SPFX controls. These are there to reduce the amount of resources what you need to invest. And we in SharePoint Engineering, we are using this SharePoint Pmp SPFX reusable controls as a way for sharing our knowledge and our internally used controls for you. And we're looking into doing this within the next quarters as well. So we're adding additional controls, additional capabilities for you to take advantage. So you don't have to always start from scratch implementing, for example, property pane controls or advanced controls for some of your web parts. On the PnP component side, there was a new 1.1 version of PnPjs library. Patrick is going to demonstrate that one within a few minutes, well, 10 minutes, because I'm babbling here for a while still. There was a new PowerShell commandlets available, and the documentation obviously has been updated in the docs.microsoft.com PowerShell side as well. And there was a new version of the reusable controls. What's big in this month on the other section, the SharePoint Starter Kit. We're going to talk about that one in a few slides, slightly more detailed, and we'll have a live demo on that one from Paolo or me, depending on if Paolo can actually join. He has a family priorities, which he might or might not be able to actually join on this call. But that's fine. Now, and then we had a new version of Office 365 CLI, which is a cross-platform command line tool, which you can also actually nowadays use also for upgrading your 1.4.1 version of SharePoint Framework solutions to 1.5. So there's a nice automation included in there to help you on the journey of upgrading to the latest version. Now, and obviously a new version of client-side object model, which is good, and updates on the SPDev documentation in general. The full list of contributors is available in here. So thank you once again tremendously for your contributions within this month. You've been highly helpful on making sure that other people can be successful within their works as well. So these are the people who've been contributing either in the GitHub or in the tech community or in the community calls as demos and providing valuable input for the users. Now, so let me click in there. And these are the actual companies and then which we have a permission to actually show or permission of the logos of those companies who the people have worked for who contributed on this month on the June 2018 release. If your name is on the previous slide, but your company logo is not here, please share to your company logo for the future preference, and we're happy to get your company logo mentioned in here. Basically, these are the companies which allowed their employees to contribute back on the community and let other people to benefit, contribute back on the community work and open source work, what we do in SharePoint Online together with SharePoint Engineering. Good. Now, and from Microsoft side, obviously, there's a big list of people. This isn't the full list of people who participated on the on our development topics and the engineering, but these are the people who've been actively involved in the community contributions or community side of the story from Microsoft as well. Some of them are from SharePoint Engineering, like I am. Some of them are not, so they're from our internal community side of the story as well. Now, a few additional things. So next, that's kind of the summary on what has happened in June. There's a few news which I wanted to actually raise still on the discussion before we go to the Patrick's demo around the taxonomy APIs, which is super cool as well. There's two big things what we're planning to do, or one news and a big thing what we're planning to do within the PnP, in the SharePoint Dev community side. First of all, we do have 2 new community members in the PnP Core Team. We haven't had yet time to write the blog post about this one, but Chris Kent and Stefan Bauer have been moving into the PnP Core Team members team, and they're helping us and they're leading their own efforts under the PnP or the SharePoint Dev umbrella. So Chris Kent is leading the effort on the column formatting, list formatting, web part, SPFX web part side of the game. Chris has been extremely active on that side and helping on others being highly successful on there. And then Stefan Bauer is starting to lead the effort around the custom Yeoman template or extension. So we are building a open source extension on top of the out-of-the-box Yeoman templates for SharePoint Framework, and Stefan is going to lead that effort. The intention is then to provide native support for Angular elements, Vue, handlebars, and whatever comes to mind from that perspective. So these are Chris and Stefan is now part of the extended MVP team for PnP group or PnP Core Team, whatever we want to call that. I don't even know, but they own stuff in the SharePoint Dev community side or open source community side. The second thing what we're looking into doing is that this is more on a clarity on let's say what's open source and what's actually natively from the SharePoint engineering. For me, this is slightly also difficult because I'm both. I'm an open source guy, but I'm also from the engineering side. But In the GitHub, we have GitHub SharePoint organization, and we will keep on having SP Dev Docs, for example, there. Our documentation is going to be there. But some of the open source repositories, so most of the open source projects, well, actually all of them, will be relocated under the PnP GitHub organization. And this is just to make sure that people understand the difference between what's part of the SharePoint engineering, let's say, work, and what's part of the community open source work. So this should help on then, let's say, differentiating that it's an open source initiative, it is a community-driven initiative, so it's located in the side of the PnP organization. Obviously, these are both sides, the SharePoint organization and the PnP organization as GitHub, are being managed by the same group of people. But this is just to differentiate, let's say, the location. If you have forked already a repository, this is completely seamless for you, so it doesn't actually break anything. GitHub is a magical platform, so even though we will relocate some of the repositories across the organization, so they technically have a different URL or a new URL, GitHub is fixing all of that, those in the requests automatically. So that's pretty cool, but we'll let you know whenever this change is actually happening. But we will start moving gradually the repository is over, one step at a time, right after this call or within the upcoming days. The second big thing what I wanted to quickly mention around the May announcements, the May thing. May has been extremely busy for engineering people, do SBC and other conferences, and also for the PnP crew. So one of the big things which we invested heavily time and we announced in the SBC was the SharePoint Starter Kit. And I just want to make sure that everybody has seen this and they are aware of this work as well. So the PnP Starter Kit is a starter kit for modern experiences, and basically AKMS SP Dev Starter Kit is the URL where you can find the GitHub location, where you can find source code, provisioning automation, ready to package SPPKG files, so you can easily take some of these web parts into use. This basically is automating or provisioning you a set of site collections. It is by default provisioning a hub site, which is a communication site, and then it associates two different other site collections to that hub site. And then it applies a custom branding for the hub site. It actually adds, let's say, 5 to 6 custom web parts on the front page of the portal. It has more than 15 web parts inside of it. It has more than 7 extensions inside of it, or demonstrated there as well. Source code, everything is available for you to reuse. It uses a custom theme, so it is using an orange as the theme. And everybody is always asking, why orange? Well, orange is my favorite color, so we chose then orange as the color. But it's there mainly to demonstrate the fact that you can actually have a custom branding well, it demonstrates the level of a custom branding, what you can actually do within the modern experiences. This is an open source community-driven development model. It is an MIT license, so you're able to pull the source code and everything down. You're able to reuse whatever you want in any way you want. So there's no, let's say, restrictions for you to reuse these in any way within your own deployments or in your customer cases, which is one of the really intentions of this one as well. We want to help you to understand what's possible with the modern experiences. And there's really cool automated configurations for site scripts and site designs to the tenant level. So you're able to actually provision when you run the provisioning setup, it's going to actually do tenant level configurations, which means that you don't necessarily want to apply this to your production immediately, because it adds a site design and site scripts and some theming files and all of that in the tenant level. But it actually shows how to make all of this happen automatically. Everything is in a GitHub. You can reuse this any way you want. You can access the source code and anything as really easily. So let me actually, just in case already, I'm going to actually add the actual URL, and thank you, Dirk, for actually adding the URL in the Ion window, just making sure that that's covered there. Everything is available already. We're looking into improving the documentation. It is already in a decent level because the automation script is quite automatic. And I'm going to talk about that one after Patrick's demo in practice. Some next steps for the starter kit. We are improving the documentation and guidance. Right now, we are still lacking kind of end-to-end solution design clarification. Why did we do this? What's there? What about the web parts? How do they work? And all of that. That's all getting written as we move along on this journey. There's more polished automated demo content in plans. So this already actually adds modern pages with images and all of that to the site, but we're looking into having a slightly more polished setup there automatically for you to take advantage. And then by Ignite, we're looking into having a self-service website as well, where you as a tenant administrator, you can sign in and you can able to, let's say, modify the theme file. You're able to modify the default images and say provision. And within the matter of 5 minutes, it's roughly 4 to 6 minutes, slightly depends on the tenant speed. It's going to actually automatically get everything provisioned. So you will have this nice self-service website to provision this demo environment to any tenant as easy as possible. Maybe in the long run, this might be an option even in the admin UIs of the SharePoint Online, but we'll see one step at a time when we move along in this journey. Now, quick few slides, and I do apologize. There's quite a lot of content, but that's fine. I think this is super valuable content as well. So, a few things on the roadmap. Calendar year, we released a lot of stuff during the spring. Obviously, right now on summer-fall timeframe, we want to have a GA version of the graph access for SharePoint Framework. That is not part of the 1.5. That's right now planned to be in 1.6. We're going to talk about that one in a second. We are looking into having enterprise solutions from SharePoint exposed in Microsoft Teams as Microsoft Teams tabs, a really cool capability which we demonstrated in Microsoft Build conference and also in the SBC keynote. We're looking into having ISV solutions for Microsoft Teams in SharePoint side, which is a core capability as well. We will have global deployment of SharePoint Framework extension support as part of 1.6 release of SharePoint Framework. We'll have a dynamic data, which is already in preview. That's communications between the components. And then the SharePoint Framework is part of the SharePoint 2019, including the modern experiences. So you will have the 1.4 version of SharePoint Framework supported in the SharePoint 2019. In SharePoint 2019 timeframe has not been yet disclosed, but there will be a beta later this summer. And then the GA potentially happens by end of this year. We'll see how the timelines actually are being then shared. 1.5 came out in June 5th, just making some repeats on this one. And there's quite a lot of cool stuff in here. I'm not going to deep dive on all of these things, but obviously it's good to have a 1.5 out. We know that there are some capabilities which people were hoping to be involved in 1.5, which are not there, but they're now planned to be in the 1.6. And 1.6 version of SharePoint Framework is planned to be released by end of July 2018. So it won't be too many months, but it will be like 1.5 months from now when this 1.6 version is out. We're planning to have GA version of the graph and third-party API calls in their GA version of Dialog Framework, support for React 16, and a few other things in this release as well. By Ignite, on Ignite, we should have 1.7 version of SharePoint Framework out, and what will be there, I cannot disclose yet that, so let's concentrate on 1.6 for now. Good, a lot of talking. Let's actually move into the demo and let's flip from me to Patrick. And Patrick's going to do a live demo on the PnPjs and the new Fluent Taxonomy API, which is absolutely brilliant way of accessing the information in the taxonomy service. Patrick, how's your audio?
Hey.
Your audio is fine, cool.
So it should be loading up here.
It is.
An error occurred during the screen presentation. Fantastic.
That sounds promising.
Try that again here. Seems to be going better, possibly. Possibly. No. All right, we'll try one more thing and share just...
And if this doesn't work for Patrick, then we're going to jump on me and doing a Starter Kit demo because Paolo isn't unfortunately yet on the call. Paolo had a family things. He wasn't sure if he can actually make it or not.
Last try. Nope. I will rejoin, and you go ahead and do a different one, and we'll see if we can't get it a little bit later.
Okay, let's actually do it then. And I'm going to share my screen and crossing fingers that this then works. But let's see. I've been having a pretty good luck on this one during today. Hey, it seems to be working. And somebody needs to confirm.
I got it on my end.
Excellent. If you got it, it went across the pond, which means that a lot of other people got it as well. So we wanted to have a talk about the SharePoint Starter Kit. And this is, like mentioned, this is really meant to show you what you can do with the communication sites. And it's a mixture of out-of-the-box web parts and a custom web parts as well. Now, the location for getting access on the SharePoint Starter Kit is github.com github.com/SharePoint/SP Starter Kit, and this is really the location where you can then load this. Now you can clone the package, or you can click the green one and then click download a zip. To be fair, we do recommend on learning how to use GitHub, so it would be worthwhile to actually not download the zip file, but you can absolutely do that as well. Now, in my case, I have this up and running in my machine, and I do apologize I didn't quite have a time to now prep this. I was hoping that Patrick would go first, but that's fine. Let's actually do this from here. So in my case, let me show you what we actually get when you install that in your machine or get it in your machine. So in my case, we have the individual folders, or I've cloned the repo. And in my case, there's then the folders are in the Git folder. Again, depends on your local setup. But the main documentation folder is relatively empty still. It actually contains guidance on how to set up the tenant level information. So if I go to the documentation, now if we go to the documentation folder, we can actually, in the tenant settings, we can actually see what's available and what has to be configured in the tenant level. Now, there's one kind of a special setup which you need to do, which is around a custom user property, which is around storing your custom personalized links. I'm going to show this capability in a second in practice, but this is basically the only thing what you need to do. There's no way for automating this in a tenant level because there's no APIs to make this happen. We're potentially looking into alternative ways of doing personalization for this capability in the future, but for now, that's needed. And then if you're looking into exposing also stock information, you would have to use the Alpha Advantage and claim your API key to do that, because we are using that Alpha Advantage APIs for showing stock information. Now, some people are still saying no sound, but there is a sound. There is a sound. Please somebody tell me that there's sound. Good. That audio means that. Okay, cool, excellent. Now, okay, let me then quickly get him back in the line on what do we actually have here. So let me go to my folder. So here's my SharePoint Starter Kit cloned to my local machine. In here, if I go cd provisioning, we actually can find deploy PowerShell script, and deploy PowerShell script is the only thing what you actually need to do here. So if you have a completely clean tenant, you can easily follow up on the guidance in the front page, which is saying prepare your tenant, upload and deploy the SPPKT file from package folder to your app catalog. This is only to avoid and reduce the time of the required for the setup. Technically, our script is actually packaging your SPPKT file for you as well, but if you want to reduce the time being spent on the setup, you can actually upload that from the package file. And then you run connect PnP online to your tenant, and then you run deploy and which tenant URL. It doesn't have to be the admin URL. And then you do a site prefix. And that's going to then set up the whole setup for your tenant. So in my case, I executed this earlier today. It takes around 5 minutes. I'm going to actually show, and Eric, I'm not going to give you control. So let me go to this tenant. And in this tenant, we have already provisioned, no worries, Eric, already provisioned the end result of the portal. So let me actually get in here. And we should actually see it in here. Yes, we do. So this is the end result, what you're actually getting. And this is a collection or a selection of out-of-the-box web parts. Like this one is an out-of-the-box web part in here, which we have then configured with example images, custom images, and all of that. And then this one here is a custom web part, which is actually insanely cool looking web part because it is actually storing this information using the SharePoint Framework reusable controls from PnP. So you're able to actually use this super cool collection drop-down or collection editor to modify what are the actual links within the tiles. So then we're able to add new tiles and all of that using this selection as well. So in my case, I'm not going to reconfigure this, so because it's already configured. And let's actually discard the changes as well. So in here, out-of-the-box web part, that's a custom web part. Weather web part, there is actually out-of-the-box weather web part coming pretty soon as well. So not sure if this is going to remain in the package. Our stock is looking good. It's going up. That's always a good sign. And then this is a banner web part, which is a custom web part, and then a word well-timed web part. This also demonstrates the extension, which is in here. So we have this expanding extension because right now, currently, within the modern experiences, we do not support a content placeholder, footer placeholder. So the placeholder, footer placeholder is always kind of a hovering on top of the actual content. And for some scenarios, that might be good. For some scenarios, some people might not like it. But this one also has a set of company links. And then you can always do the edit and add here a own SB, PnP, the most important SharePoint dev community, PnP, and the URL to remember is what? AKMS SB PnP, right? And clicking add. And that's going to actually save that URL to the user profile. And that was the user profile property which is getting used in here. In this particular setup, hello, I didn't actually test it. Is it working or not in this particular tenant? But it basically meant to be saving that to the user profile. Apparently, actually, there was a small hiccup there, but that's fine. Now, what else they actually showed is that if I go to the personal tab, it actually shows a rendering of or using the Graph APIs to get access on meetings, get access on personal emails, get access on tasks and all of that, if you're given the right permissions to do so. In my case, in this particular tenant, I actually haven't, and that's the reason why I don't have the required permission yet. But if I would actually jump, if I do this in a polished tenant, so let me do Contoso portal, jumping to the Contoso portal and jumping to the example graph, which is the personal here. This link is added automatically in the hub navigation. It actually shows then how to get access on the graph and data behind of the Graph API. So for example, in my case, my tasks and my personal email in this particular tenant, and then contacts or upcoming meetings. Pretty cool stuff. It also actually has a few extensions, like mentioned. So if I go to the site contents, in this case, we can actually see that in the site contents list, we have alerts list. And in this alert list, we have created a alert, which is called Company Summer Event Next Week. Please remember to register company event, and there's a start date and an end date, how it's being visible. Now, an alert type. This here is basically controlling what kind of information is getting shown in the extension. So header extension getting shown these alerts for the end users, which is a pretty cool way of extending the UI as well. Now, the code itself, I'm not going to deep dive in here because hopefully Patrick's demo is still available. But if I go in here, and then I went to a completely wrong location, let me actually close that. Let me go in here, and let's go solution. And here we go. Now if I go open up Visual Studio Code, all of the code for all of the web parts and everything else, and whatever we do is in the, we actually built the whole thing now openly in the dev branch. So all of the following versions and changes are being tracked in the dev branch, and then every now and then we merge that to the master branch. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 web parts. For example, the personal calendar, personal emails, how to get access on that, you're able to have a look on the implementation of that functionality. All of these are being built using React because they're using Office UI Fabric, or they're using the SharePoint Framework reusable controls from PnP and the Office UI React Office UI Fabric React controls, just to give you the consistent look and feel. But it actually, there's a lot of insights on this implementation. So how to use the Graph client, how to get the information, how to render the information in the different scenarios. All of the extensions are here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 extensions, which are available for take advantage. For example, the portal footer, which is the extending footer, or the collab footer. And the collab footer is something which we actually get if we, this should actually be working in here. Let me actually jump to this one, and I'm going to test this one, and then we're going to move to Patrick. So if I create a new team site or communication site, or team site collaboration folder, after running the setup, you will see a Contoso team site design, which is demonstrated in the setup as well. And we're able to then create a new site based on this site design and site script behind of the site designs. Now let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right about now, finish button is active. Clicking that one. Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. We will actually have a modern team site where we then run a site design where we actually associate this newly created site to a hub site, and then we associate a SharePoint Framework extension footer to the site. So let's have a look on the updated site. We can actually see that the site has been associated to the hub because we have the hub navigation available automatically in here. And we also actually have this pretty cool footer, which actually supports adding the custom links to yourself as well. So there's a slightly different looking footer, which is working quite nicely. There's a company links here visible in here as well. So quite nice setup, and all of the source code, everything is ready for you to take advantage. Now, I do apologize on the technical issue. Patrick, are you there? Patrick?
I have no idea. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Hopefully the presentation actually works as well.
All right. I'm going to try and share my screen.
And Ryan is messing with you immediately.
Not today, Ryan.
Should I stop sharing? Oh, it looks promising.
I don't know.
It looks promising.
Oh my gosh.
Come on, we can do this.
It seems like it's sharing.
And I can see Infinite Loop. Yay!
All right, before it crashes. This is the same demo I talked through at the European Collaboration Summit, which maybe the technical difficulties are just this demo causes them somehow. But so what you're looking at here is this is the project. This is the PnPjs full libraries, and what I'm using is the F5 debugging capabilities to just run these demo files, and wanted to show this off. But what we're showing off today is the new Taxonomy Library. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to take a look at the docs, or maybe you're at the European Collaboration Summit, the goal of this library was to really give folks a fluent, easy way to access managed metadata in SharePoint and understanding that the REST API, there's still no REST API backing this, but we wanted to present an API surface for folks to use that would be very similar and familiar with what we've done with, for example, the @PnP SP library, for example, or any of the others in this PnPjs family of libraries. So the first thing you'll note at the top, we're importing an object called taxonomy from PnP/SP-taxonomy. This matches exactly what you do with the SharePoint library, importing that SP object. But here we're importing taxonomy. You do need, so for example, this is going to be running in Node.js, so you would still need to call the setup method here. You would still need to call, if you were in SharePoint Framework, you would call the setup method and supply the SharePoint Framework context in exactly the same way you do for SharePoint. And in fact, just to sort of give you some insight into this, we're actually inside the taxonomy library, we're just aliasing the SP setup method. So there's no extra magic going on with taxonomy. But the reason for doing that is I think it makes it a lot easier for folks. If you just are working with taxonomy, you don't have to import the SP library, call its setup method, and call, then taxonomy methods. It might not make, it might be a little unclear exactly how that would flow. So you can call taxonomy.setup. Here we're just creating our node fetch client. So this is using a ACS registered client ID and secret. I'm getting those out of a settings file so that those are hidden away. But this is just the URL to our site, ID and secret. So we're doing that setup, and that allows us to call the taxonomy code. I'm going to hit F5 to run this while I talk through it a little bit. So the taxonomy object, just like the SP object with the SharePoint library, is your sort of root object or starting point for your Fluent queries. And so what we're doing is we're calling the method for get default site collection term store. And then you've seen in the past, you've seen us use this get call with the SP libraries, and it's the same idea here. And what we're doing under the hood is we're actually building, and you can see the results come down. We'll talk about that in a second. What we're actually doing is under the hood building our XML request to the client SVC endpoint, and this get is actually invoking that. So we've kept the same, we'll call it sort of same language or same semantics as we did in the SP library talking to REST. So this appears very REST-like, but under the hood is being converted to a client SVC query. And then we're just logging our JSON return object, which what we've got down here is you can see we've called the process query endpoint, and then we've gotten back, where does it start? Where does it start? So here's our properties is online. We've got our languages, our name, and we're getting these things back. So it works very familiar with what you're used to with the SP stuff. So I'm going to comment that out, and I want to show a couple other examples here of just how we've sort of stuck with that Fluent idea. So taxonomies have term stores. Term stores, you want to get that by ID. And then we want to select from that term store the name. So that's one example here. And then wanted to show as well below, we're going to get that term store by ID, but we want to get a term set by ID, and we want to select that term set's name. So where you might have seen when using the JSON, that series of getting objects and then doing things and adding queries, we've hidden all that away, and we're now able to use or present just this Fluent API. I'm going to hit F5 again just so this can run, but present this Fluent API and allow you to work very easily and in a manner you're familiar with if you've used the PnPjs libraries in the past. So we're hoping to make adoption of this very simple, but still very powerful and allow you to get this managed metadata out of SharePoint, which has been, obviously, it's been the #1 user voice ask for a long time. And while we, PnP, aren't able to deliver you a REST API, we were able to hopefully make working with the taxonomy stuff a lot easier and a lot more intuitive and remove those sp.js dependencies from your project. So you can see here, we've got our names back. So that's the term store name, and then this is the term set name, which is just, kind of junk because this is all just my testing tenant. But you can see we've been able to fluently get that stuff back, and you'll see many of the other methods follow that kind of stuff. And the last, I want to show you two more things as we go in here. We, of course, wanted to support batching in a similar way. One of the complexities here is we can't share batches, right? You can't share a batch from between the REST and the client SVC. So what we've done is you create the batch instead of off of your SP object or your SP web object, you create it right off the taxonomy, and that's going to create a different batch object because it's working with the client SVC and it works in a different way. But that complexity is then again hidden away, and we're able to make our calls. I'm going to hit F5 so this can run as I'm talking. We're able to make our calls in exactly the same way. So we're getting the site collection default term store, selecting its name, and in the same syntax that we've set up with the SP stuff, I'm saying in batch, and I'm passing that batch object in, and I'm calling get. I'm doing the same thing here, get by ID, and then I'm executing that batch. And one of the things you'll note here is I'm just doing GET requests, but this also works with updates or creates with the POST requests. This exact same pattern will work. You just pass it into the batch and call the batch.execute. So this is exactly the same patterns we've set up with the SharePoint libraries, again, hoping to make adoption easier. And you can see I've just written out 1, 2, 3, so you can see that we're actually as well resolving all those promises in order that you would expect. So you might get some data here, you might get some data here, and then once the entire batch has completed, you might update your UI. You might set a timer for a minute or something to refresh that data again, but it'll let you know the rest of the batch. Powerful.
Unbelievable. We just can't make this work. Can people hear me? Okay, thank you. So I can act almost like Patrick. No, I can't. So first of all, I just want to make sure if we get Patrick online, if we get Patrick back, the URL was already a few times in the IAM window. It is PnPjs. So PnP/PnPjs is the new version of the PnPjs core. So this is a replacement of the classic PnPjs core, which is more modern, and it has the taxonomy things and all of that's available. So that's all good. And Patrick is still ongoing and showing us the caching. He apparently hasn't noticed that we lost audio, which is actually a pity. But basically, the whole point of this one, what you're seeing here, is that you have a Fluent API, and what we're intended to do with this one right now, there is no such thing as a REST APIs for taxonomy. This is using classic client SVCs and it's encapsulating those calls behind the scenes, which is supported because that is actually a client side that is documented in the protocol docs. Now, it's not the preferred way, and sooner or later there will be a native REST API available as well. Now, what that one means that whenever the native REST API is available, I'm going to move back on the slide, and whenever the native REST API is available, we'll flip the implementation of the PnPjs to use the native REST API. So if you're using this implementation right now, it should be relatively or completely, hopefully seamless for you to then transition to the new model when that is available. Now we're hitting the hour as well. We just can't get this right. In every single call, we have some issues. But that is indeed the new repo, github.com/pn/pmjs. So that should be fine. Now, not seamless. So, fair point. Zoomless is Finglish, but it means seamless in English. So there's a big transition over there. Now, the REST API for taxonomy is not in SharePoint 2019. It's always cloud first. So you will not see anything client-side development style first in SharePoint 2019, because SharePoint 2019 is based on SharePoint Online, but it was forked a few months ago. So SharePoint 2019 is an older version of SharePoint than SharePoint Online. Which is which is important to also understand. So now, as part of the SharePoint Online, we are currently looking into investing more on the enterprise content management story. There is work being done. I cannot explain even the estimate right now for the potential taxonomy API, because we don't want to promise anything. Will it be at some point in SharePoint Online? Absolutely, that is the intention. Whenever it comes to the SharePoint Online, then sooner or later it comes also for SharePoint 2019. Now, will it be in where or which version? We'll see, and we do not know that. Good. Yes. Okay, now Patrick realized that he lost the audio. Cool. We do apologize on the technical issues. I think we were able to capture all of the live demos, so everything is recorded. We'll get the video out in 24 hours, and the video will be available in the YouTube channel at AKMS SPDev videos in 24 hours. Typically it will be 20 hours from now or something like that, so afternoon on my time zone when I'm sitting in Finland. But thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We do apologize. We're trying to figure out if we potentially need to flip the technology for these conference calls, because we're hitting already more than 200 attendees on these calls. But thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for your patience. We will try to figure out how can we guarantee more reliable platform in the future. Please keep on giving us the feedback in the issue list and using the other social media channels. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be absolutely in touch. Bye-bye.